Hey y'all, it's Angela. Very glad to have you here today. So in today's vlog, I read 4 new releases from the month of January / early February. One of my casual goals for this year has been to read more new releases because I do tend towards backlist. So this week I checked out The Maid by Nita Prose, The Roughest Draft by Emily Wibberley and Austin Sigmund Broca, The Red Palace by June Her, and Finley Donovan Knocks 'Em Dead by El Kazimano. I'm super excited to share these books with you all. If any of these books were on your radar, please let me know in the comments, and if you plan to read them, let me know as well. But yeah, let's get into the vlog portion of this video. This was definitely not the first shot that I planned, but it's the first shot that we're gonna get because this morning I unexpectedly found a copy of The Maid by Nita Prose, and it was one of the top books on my anticipated list, so I had to start reading on that. And it's like one of those quick loan copies where it's like you can only borrow it for 7 days through Libby. This book follows a woman named Molly. She works as a maid for this pretty fancy hotel, and one day she finds this man dead in his hotel room, and she becomes kind of like the main suspect because she is a little bit unique. Basically, she has a hard time with social cues and social interactions, and she doesn't have a lot of people close in her life that can kind of help her and support her in that way. She builds new friendships and has to try to kind of solve her way out of this really unfortunate situation with this guy who, you know, is dead. Here it is. I don't think you can even show it. So far, I really like Molly. We're getting to know her and see the world through her lens. And I also like the way the story is being told. It's a very masterful weaving of past, present, showing bits and pieces of Molly's life. Molly takes a lot after her grandmother's little idioms and stuff, and so she kind of speaks like a bit like a 80-year-old woman, which is kind of endearing, honestly. I like it. I like those kind of things. All those elements together has really made this book kind of exceed my expectations, and I'm really excited to keep reading on and figuring out what happens. I just want to like live in this world. Like, I don't mind getting to know all the characters here. There's definitely more than what meets the eye, and I think that is like the sign of really good characterization. And unfortunately, I don't know if I'm going to read any more tonight. It is pretty late and I still have more work to do. Can you believe it? On a weekday night. But more stuff to do, and I think I'm actually posting a new video soon. It's going to be my January wrap-up, which will definitely be up by the time this video is out. Maybe I'll listen to a little bit of The Maid. Who knows? Here's to a preemptive good night, and I'll see y'all later. Good morning, friends. I'm struggling a little bit for natural light here, but I wanted to come on with my coffee. The coffee decided to take center stage. I didn't mean to just kind of shove it in my face here, but my coffee's taking center stage and it has to share the spotlight with my update for The Maid. I listened to a little bit of it last night before going to bed, and something kind of major has just happened. We're kind of delving more into Molly's unsuccessful attempts with romance, and especially talking about how she got screwed over by this guy before, who really truly scum of the earth. But now there's a new guy that Molly's interested in. He's possibly worse than the person that, you know, who already screwed her over. And I think it's really interesting to see all the little signs that we as readers can pick up on and be like, huh, that's a red flag, that's suspicious, it's very weird. But Molly is just kind of taking it at face value, which will probably get her into some trouble later. But I just love kind of how she deals with awkward situations sometimes. Like, I just love how she just like steamrolls over the awkwardness. I wish I had that kind of energy sometimes, honestly. This book has me so livid, so heated right now. As we're getting to know Molly more, we're also getting to know more of her interactions with people at the hotel, her relationship with the wife of the man who died, Giselle, and I'm just so I'm angry for her because the ridicule that Molly receives because she just, you know, sometimes struggles with social cues is like so severe, and it's just the names she gets called, and I feel so sorry for Molly because like I mentioned in the last clip, there is something big going on at the hotel that has to do with the hotel employees that Molly is just unaware of, and she's being tied into this even though she really is a very innocent bystander in all of this. She just doesn't, she can't see what's going on, like the big picture of it. Thank goodness she has a few people at the hotel who genuinely have her best interest in mind and are trying to look out for her. It's going very badly for her right now, very badly. And I really do feel for Molly right now. I like her and I feel sorry for her. I just want good things to happen to her because there's been so many she's just had such bad luck. I just finished The Maid and what can I even say? It was great. And just the way that Nita Prose has shifted like the timeline of how she tells Molly's story, it's so layered, and she's such a strong character. I think if anything else, you will love Molly by the end of this book. She's just one of my favorite characters that I've encountered in any book so far this year. There's certainly a few twists that happen near the end of the book, and I think I'll need a bit of time to think about whether those twists worked. I think a good twist doesn't really depend on if it's predictable or not. I think it depends on how well the author has set it up. I think that there were a lot of really small like hints and details that built up to these certain twists in the story. So far I think that despite how sudden some of them were, I do like them. And after finishing the story, I just feel really warm on the inside. It's a whole book of Molly's growth through this very unfortunate and just terrifying ordeal, honestly. I've come away feeling like I'm the one who's learned the biggest lesson here. I don't know, that sounds cheesy, but it was a great book. I see why now it's gotten so much press and attention and kind of advertising. I really would recommend you check it out, though check out some trigger warnings. I'll have those linked in the document in the description about this book. There are a lot more sensitive topics than I think are revealed in the synopsis, so please check those. This book was fantastic, would definitely recommend, and I think right now I'm giving it a 5 stars. I'm in the middle of reading The Maid right now, but I needed a little bit of a break from, audiobooks. I want to read with my eyeballs, so I also decided to start the roughest draft. Ooh, this was not a good idea. I love how you can't see it, but here it is, the roughest draft. This book is quite a different pace than The Maid. It's a romance, first of all, and it's about these two people, Katrina and Nathan. They were co-authors of this best-selling book, but then something happened while they were finishing up writing the book, and it basically drove like a permanent wedge between them. They haven't spoken in 3 years. They refuse to be seen with each other. The whole literary world is basically like buzzing and speculating about what happened to them. Why have they stopped writing together? Unlucky for them, they have one more book contracted with their publisher that they have to complete, and so their agents basically forced them together to write this book. These two authors go back to the small Florida town that they wrote their first book in, and we as readers get to find out what the heck happened to them. It did give off the same synopsis feeling as People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry, but as I'm starting to read it, it's giving off very different like tone of voice. It's pretty serious and solemn, actually. We got a lot going on from the start. We start with Katrina, who after publishing her book with Nathan has just stopped writing. She hasn't published since. She hasn't written anything down, even just as drafts. She actually has like a trauma surrounding books, writing, her old life in general. She's also engaged to the agent who was representing Katrina and Nathan when they were writing their first book. So a little awkward there. Then we also get the point of view of Nathan, who, when he was writing the book with Katrina, he was married to this woman named Melissa, but then something happened. They got a divorce, and he has tried to publish by himself, but no publisher or agent really wants just him. They want the duo together. He's having a lot of trouble actually publishing by himself. Right now, I'm only 30 pages in, so we're trying to find out kind of the motivation of what is going to make those two come together and write this book that they obviously don't want to write. And like I mentioned, the tone of the book is actually pretty serious. It's not really lighthearted like I was kind of hoping it to be. Especially with Katrina, I think you still feel the hurt that she has and all the trauma that she's had to work through with professional help. You immediately feel this very like serious and tense air between Katrina and Nathan. So whatever happened was not like a lighthearted like thing. I'm curious as to what the twist could be, if it's just the romance or if there was something more. I hope there's something more, because if it was just the romance between these two, it's kind of like yeah. I also think I need a little bit of time to actually get to know these characters, because even right now I'm only semi feeling them and invested in their story. I think I'm really figuring out that I like books about authors. I thought originally that I just like books about books in general, but no, I really like reading about authors writing and their thought process and them creating new worlds. A lot of my favorite books from the past few years has featured authors like Misery by Stephen King, or The Plot by Gene Corlitz, Beach Read by Emily Henry. If y'all have any books about authors that you've either read or that you've liked, please let me know. I am always on the hunt for more books about authors at this point, honestly. Like, it's just one of those things that if I see it, I'll definitely pick it up. So yeah, please feel free to let me know. I'm about a quarter of the way through the roughest draft, and I've just come up to the part where Nathan and Katrina have gotten to the villa in Florida that they wrote their first book in. And as expected, it's very, very tense right from the get-go. But what I didn't really expect was just how full of conflict this book is in general. It's a very unhappy book. Even in the sections from Katrina and Nathan's past where they're writing their first book, where, you know, you would assume that it's more fun and kind of dwells on the happier memories. This is not a very lighthearted read, in my opinion, at all. Honestly, one of the things that I've gotten kind of annoyed with the trends of book covers is that after a few really popular romance books have kind of set this trend of this very like bright, graphically designed book cover, I feel like every single contemporary romance has the exact same style, but all those books were very much like romantic comedies. They were much more lighthearted. And then a book like this, where it still has the very same like bright, very like cutesy kind of book cover, is actually hiding this kind of darker and sad and just plain unhappy book between these two characters. And obviously there's going to be moments later on where we get to see the possible like romance or like where the good feeling is developing. But right now I'm feeling a little bit miffed, just a little bit, that I'm like getting clickbaited almost by this book. After resetting my expectations, I am getting more into the book and their motivations for why they're both very unhappily writing this book together. I still don't think I have quite a grasp on what drove them apart. I thought I did. I'm definitely excited to figure out the reveal for what happened between them there. I'm just gonna say this now. You have not experienced sexual tension until you've read two people having to write a very passionate, emotionally charged sex scene together at the same time while having their own personal tension. Everything is innuendos. Every spacing in between their words is innuendos. But one thing I'm realizing with Nathan and Katrina's relationship is that everything they do and say is just so layered with subtext, and at times it feels like their relationship is built on them writing out the scene of their relationship, not really them in the moment feeling their relationship, and that does take away kind of some authenticity. I've never had a book feel this way, for romance at least, and I think it's gonna take a bit of time, hopefully, for this to kind of like show more of their genuine character and connection, because right now I am very much missing that component. Hey y'all, Same location, different day. I had to hop on though because the roughest draft, I I'm feeling so incredibly annoyed in a bad way. I am very open to like how a relationship develops in a romance. The one thing I cannot stand is when cheating is employed as the foundation for the couple we're supposed to be rooting for. That is the one hard line I draw in my own personal preference for reading. I don't think it's much of a spoiler to say that emotional cheating is a pretty big part of this book because from the first or second chapters, you find out that Nathan was married when he was writing this book with Katrina, and then after the book was published and after they stopped talking, he got divorced. Not only does this cheating kind of take front and center in the plot, they try so hard to use excuses related to artistic freedom, like excusing it as writing in the minds of their characters or kind of things along that line to try to justify their relationship. And right now, that is not sitting well with me. I find the way that they so heavily use their writing back and forth to communicate extremely weird and childish. Like, it's a new level of indirect bad communication. Quite frankly, I don't know how they have gotten this far in a partnership where they literally don't say anything important to each other. Like things about their relationship that they need to have out in the open, they avoid like it's the plague. I think Nathan and Katrina are so hell-bent on being the good guys in the story that they've written in their head that they fail to realize that they're both villains. They're both bad people. Because it's from two point of views, it is very intensely like you see how they're thinking and they're trying so hard to justify everything that they've done when it is objectively bad. Like they are bad people. They are destructive people. They are people who can't communicate. And we're supposed to be somehow rooting for them, question mark, at this point in the story, which I'm 2/3 of the way through. At this point, I think we're still supposed to be rooting for their relationship. And that pisses me off to no end. The only thing at this point that could change how I feel about this book is the way the authors choose to end this relationship. So that's why I'm still on the fence. I'm hesitant to like put a decisive feeling on this book right now just because it could completely flip depending on how the kind of climax of this book is resolved, and I'm definitely curious as to what road they take. I'm not having a great time, honestly. I'm feeling very like annoyed. I finished it, the roughest draft, and I think I still stand by everything I was saying in the last clip. It is incredibly hard to love a romance book when you despise both characters, and that's kind of just where we ended up. The ending cleared up a lot of the mystery surrounding the split between Nathan and Katrina on their last partnership. But the reasoning behind it wasn't a surprise, or in the sense that like it's mentioned and you expect something bigger, but there really wasn't anything bigger. It was what it was, and then that led to their split. So it'd be kind of vague to not spoil the entire book, but I don't think that the reasoning behind the split was proportional to how dramatic the split was. One good thing I can say about this book is that it's very well written. The language and the way emotional tension is very slowly and methodically built. The way you can see the subtle ways that Nathan and Katrina's relationship has kind of evolved. The nuances of Katrina's relationship with her fiance were very interesting to delve into. If they had applied to a slightly different story, a slightly different relationship would have immediately made this book like a minimum 4 or 5 stars. I think I've ranted plenty about all my reasons for not loving this book, so I'm sitting at about like a 3 or a 3.5 stars. The final thing I'll say is if you're okay with reading about dubious relationships, kind of blurred lines in a relationship, this might be like a really good like 4 or 5 star book for you. If that's something, like the kind of blurred lines in the relationship bothers you like it did for me, I wouldn't really recommend this. It was very uncomfortable to read. That's my final thoughts on it. We'll move on to the next book. Don't forget this happened. Hi, welcome to my kitchen cabinet. I figured I needed a little bit of a break in between the very, very busy task of laying on my bed and then laying on my couch. So I'm going to be making some tea and talking to you a little bit about reading The Red Palace by June Her. Today, from my tea jar that says pasta, I'm gonna probably have rooibos. That sounds like a choice. So, what is The Red Palace about? Well, this book is about a young woman named Hyun, and she is a palace nurse in 1758 Joseon. She is the daughter of, I think, this very important man in the Joseon period, but with like a concubine. I kind of forgot who her father was, but basically they're estranged. So one day when she hears that 4 women were murdered in the palace, she kind of squeezes her way into the scene, and she overhears this conversation between the main commander investigator and Hyun's mentor slash friend. Now it's very obvious the investigator suspects Hyun's mentor as the prime suspect, and that they also have a history that we don't quite know about yet. But while Hyun is spying, he's caught in the act by another police investigator. And while the police investigator is thinking of turning her in, she gives him this crucial piece of reasoning or logic in that she's noticed all these women were killed by very precise knife work belonging to someone who knew what they were doing in terms of cutting up the human body. AKA think like, you know, doctors, nurses, someone who knows what they're doing. So the police investigator lets her go, and that's kind of where I'm at in this story currently. Hyun is obviously thinking of all the different ways that she can to try to help prove that her mentor is innocent. She's just so sure of her mentor's character. This book sounds very similar to the setup of the first book I read from June Her, The Silence of Bones. I think I'll have that popped up somewhere. I actually had a worry that it might be kind of repetitive. There's a lot of similarities between at least the synopsis for that book and this one. So I guess we'll have to kind of keep going and see if there are extra kind of details and plot points that make this book unique. We'll see. I'm excited, and it seems like it'll be a pretty quick and snappy read. And my tea. I don't know why rooibos kind of smells like medicinal bandages. I'm very excited right now. Late last night, I managed to snag a library copy of Finley Donovan Knocks 'Em Dead, which is the sequel to Finley Donovan is Killing It. This book just came out like 3 days ago, so it's like hot off the press, and I'm very excited to read this one because I read the first book quite recently actually. I unexpectedly liked it when I had very low expectations going into it, but then I'm not sure where to end this vlog because including The Red Palace, I have 3 more books then planned for this video. I really want to share these books with y'all, especially since they're so new. I think we can get through The Red Palace today. It's a pretty average length audiobook, and we're just starting to get into like the main plot, so I'm getting more invested. We've hit the part where the main character Hyun and the police servant who she thought was a police servant, he's actually like the new head police investigator, Ajin, but they started planning to work together because Ajin sees that Hyun is very perceptive, and plus she has this in with the palace servants and the palace workers and the gossip there, so he kind of wants her to be the eyes and ears inside the palace while using her kind of knowledge and her perceptiveness to help him solve the mystery of who murdered all these women. There's this competing force against them though, because somebody is spreading rumors that the crown prince did it, and so because that is like, it's a no-no to say anything bad against royalty, the commanders are trying to make this an open shut case, which means that they're basically finding whoever seems like the easiest suspect and just immediately charging them with the crime. Hyun and Ajin are under a very like tight deadline. But yeah, I'm 30% through. It is, again, very much reading like The Silence of the Bones. While I did love that book, I'm afraid that these two might have too many similarities to be distinguished from each other, which would be a little bit disappointing. But I'm holding out hope for now just because I'm only in the first third, and there might be a few twists and turns that make this very, very interesting read. Hi friends, I finished The Red Palace by June Her, and I had updated on Friday saying that I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna finish it by today. It's Sunday. I just finished it, and I really think it's like that middle chunk of investigation to this case that really slowed me down. The beginning was interesting to get to know setup, though it was pretty confusing for me just because there were so many names and people and titles right off the bat. But the ending I thought was really well-rounded, and all the different plot lines that had been started in relation to the main character Hyun had been tied up so well and so thoughtfully, and I think that the character development for her was like very smooth. I really didn't know where it was gonna go, but I loved how it ended. This might be another historical fiction that I remember as really enjoying and really liking. It's certainly super action-packed. Overall, I think I'm gonna give it a 4 stars because I did enjoy the character development and where the plot ended up, but there were definitely parts of the book that were a lot slower and much more dense to get through, and it didn't inspire me to really read on. But yeah, overall, another really great historical fiction from June Her. Alright, good morning y'all. I am feeling like a little bit of a hot mess this morning, but I'm caffeinated and ready to go. Last night I got about 30% into Finlay Donovan Knocks 'Em Dead, which is the sequel to Finlay Donovan. Finlay Donovan is killing it. I was going to start with Anatomy, which was part of the original list of books that I had planned for this video, but I got only a few, like a chapter and a half into it, and I needed something more fast-paced. I just did. I needed something a little bit snappy, a little bit more contemporary, especially considering I just finished The Red Palace, which was another historical fiction. There's only so much history I can take in the span of 24 hours, so Finlay Donovan was a great buffer for that. Quick summary of Finlay Donovan is Killing It, the first book of the series. Finlay is kind of juggling a lot of things on her plate. She is an author, so she has this book that she got an advance for that she still really doesn't have written, and she's under pressure from that side. She recently got divorced from her husband, who's kind of an asshole, and she has to take care of her 2 kids, and she really doesn't have a lot of resources and time to take care of her kids, and she's just struggling to make ends meet. So when she meets up with her agent to discuss the plot of her romantic suspense novel, a lady overhears her and thinks that she's actually a contract killer, and so she hires Finlay to kill her husband, and Finlay is very desperate for money, and there's $50,000 on the table, and she ends up accidentally getting hired as a contract killer. At the end of the first book, we leave off on this huge cliffhanger where we find out that someone is trying to kill Finlay's ex-husband. So that's where we pick up on the second book. Finlay is working with her accomplice slash babysitter slash accountant slash friend, Vero, to find out who put this hit order on her ex-husband, and it involves a lot of dark web tracking, seeing if they could trace like specific email addresses on this anonymous chat room board, and it's all very difficult for Finlay. And she's also, again, still struggling with this relationship between her and her ex-husband Steven, who is still kind of an asshole. They're arguing a lot over their kids, the only tie they really have left. As a reader, I'm kind of wondering, like, what is Finlay's motivation for trying to protect her husband so bad? I just might be kind of mean, but he's not exactly a great guy, and it kind of makes sense why there are people out there who hate him so much. And then we have the love interests. So in the first book, we had this bartender slash lawyer student who has this like deep innate understanding of who Finley is and who Finley felt really connected to. And then we have this cop who works with Finley's sister that, you know, also is really interested in her, and Finley feels some sort of way getting involved with law enforcement, especially considering her past. So we got these two love interests both vying for her attention. It's very tense. That was the one thing I didn't expect going into this book series, was just how much the romance would actually play into the plot. I really thought this was going to be more of just a comedic suspense mystery, that kind of side of things, but there's definitely a lot of sexual tension at play, and Finley has to kind of pick and choose who she thinks she can really trust to help her in these very delicate matters. Since I've been filming this video for more than a week now, I think that I'll probably end on this book, and I'm very excited to do so. I feel like a lot of people say this, but I didn't go into this book or this book series with a ton of high expectations, but I ended up really having a good time. It's got that kind of element of like comedy, but it knows that it's a little bit over dramatic. It's like a very interesting balance that the author has in genre, and there are definitely some thrilling moments. Hopefully I finish this book soon and give you all the rundown of what's going on. I wonder if I'll be able to solve the mystery. Last time, I think it was kind of out of left field on the first book. I definitely didn't expect the person and the kind of mystery there. Since we've already been introduced to this huge cast of characters, I'm sure that one of them that we know will be the one who will be the guilty one. Hello, it's the next day and I managed to finish Finley Donovan Knocks Him Dead. I read it in basically 2-ish sittings. I don't know what it was about this book, but I couldn't stop thinking about it, and as soon as I jumped in to the world, I just kept going and going until I read to the end, apparently. And here we are, Finley Donovan Knocks Him Dead. I think that while the first book had a very strong start of plot, rise, and kind of conclusion and wrap up of plot to start the next one, this book is very much setting up this bigger plot for future books. So I think that this might end up being one of those longer running series where we keep following Finley as she literally gets herself into all these messy, sticky situations. I don't even know how one person can reasonably find herself in so many unfortunate situations and get herself into so much trouble. No, actually I can, because the decisions she makes are things that no normal person would think of. I really think that her being an author of romantic suspense makes sense for this book, just because of all the crazy things that only I feel like someone who has written equally as crazy things will think of to do as the next steps in, you know, cleaning up whatever mess she has to. Throughout the first book and through this one, it is kind of a running theme that Finley's novel kind of reflects what's happening to her in real life, and I didn't know how I was feeling about that, honestly, in the second book, just because I thought that method of foreshadowing might be a little obvious and not really like ruin the plot, but just kind of take a little bit of the fun out of what we're experiencing as readers. But I don't think it ultimately affected the reveal of the main big plot. A lot of it is that Finley is writing it after the fact. And overall, I had a lot of fun reading this book. And I think that's what's been surprising me the most about the series, is that you would think that chick lit mystery suspense wouldn't be as like high stakes or exciting or as like plot driven, but there's a lot of different moving parts happening in this book that do make it a proper mystery suspense. And the whole time I was also trying to figure out what the heck was happening. I liked the different twists, and the twists often feel more on the kind of contemporary fiction side, where it's like trying to give you a bigger message about the characters. So I had a lovely time reading this book. I gave this one 5 stars just for sheer happiness and enjoyment while reading it. I'll definitely be picking up the third one. I mean, at this point, I just like the entire series. And I think this is where I will end the vlog. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end if you are here. If you want to be friends with me on other platforms, I have my Goodreads, Instagram, and Storygraph linked in my description, as well as the document of trigger warnings, content warnings for all the books that I've read throughout this video, so you can check those out before you pick up any of these yourself. I usually don't read a lot of new releases, so this video was quite different for me. I find that I really like checking out all these new books and kind of having an opinion on them, and then being able to watch as everyone else starts reading them and sharing their thoughts and like joining in on the discussion. So I think honestly I might be doing this more often. But yeah, let me know what y'all thought about these books, if you read them, if you're interested in checking them out. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time.